G'day and welcome to Blokes World, and we're at the pointy end of our 2-day course at Allenberg Racing Schools at Laguna Seca, California. We're going to be fine-tuning our driving and also getting a little bit nerdy with the technology that's going to help us prepare to drive this weapon. No, we're not dropping the kids off at school in the 90s. We're racing for 6 hours at the Nota Grand Prix at Lakeside Park. So don't you go anywhere. You're watching Blokes World. It's the second day of our Allenberg Racing School's 2-day driving program. This is an incredibly intense course. There's a lot of seat time in the cars. In fact, it's mostly free lapping. On day 1, they positioned instructors at almost every corner of the track. So when we came back in from a driving session, they were lined up with their notes on how we could improve our speed at their part of the track. On the morning of day 2, they ran cameras on the cars, so they could sit us down after those sessions to give us some one-on-one coaching.
And then in the afternoon, which we're getting to right about now, this is where the fun really begins because, you know, when we're talking to you guys, you say, I did break at the 3 mark. Well, we're gonna be looking at data and we'll be able to see you break in 400 yards behind the 3 mark. So no more lying to us, we're gonna catch you red-handed. But that's what'll help you get faster is basically just using that data from the get-go.
Alright viewers, pretty psyched. We've had a few car changes for this last run. Check out what I get to drive. Apparently it's loud and obnoxious. What can you tell me about the Trump car?
Trump car is the best car, absolutely. It's the fastest one out there.
The data systems that we use are GPS based. Basically what it does is record the speeds, driving line around the racetrack, lateral, longitudinal Gs, and then recording that, it's then displayed on a per lap basis on our screens, and we're able to provide overlays comparing one driver to the next, showing their driving line and showing their cornering speeds and their straightaway speeds. And then from there, our coaches analyze the data and are able to pick up the key points of where a driver's doing well, okay, to give him reinforcement that what he's doing is correct. Most importantly, the areas that he can improve on through direct comparison, looking at the data. And it's very concise, it's very accurate, and you can really get in and show specific parts of the driver's performance on where they can improve. Typically, the amount of information that is recorded can be so overwhelming. What my staff typically do is they go in and they'll pick out the highlights of what a driver is doing, and for the most part it's usually the same thing repeated, the same problem in a number of corners on the racetrack, to give them, you know, 2 or 3 goals each time they go out. Say, okay, so in turn number 5, turn number 6, and turn number 10, you're turning in too early, so you need to correct that. So we try to give them sustainable goals each time they go out to improve their driving performance. And then we do that through the data, we do that through the onboard video cameras, and we also do it through the actual instruction, because not only are my coaches analyzing the data and looking at the video, they're going out in the corners and looking at each of the corners to all of the drivers that are going on around the track and coming back in. They're providing it via radio feedback to the drivers, or after the session coming in and speaking to them in the pit lane as they get out of the cars.
We've got a really good group here these last 2 days. I've seen a lot of progression. We do video and data review, and that's really helpful because, we can watch, I can ride with you in the car.
Hang on, it looks like we're going in slow motion here. Let me just go back. Oh no, it is actual real. It is real time. So sorry. We should be going, flat out over the top of turn 1, and you should be braking here.
And correct things outside of the car, give you a chance to think about it, go out and drive again. And I've seen a lot of progression throughout the last 2 days, and especially from this morning till right now.
One thing that I really pride in the school is the ability to select the best instructors in the country. And I don't like to call them instructors because these guys are coaches. These guys make their living, number one, driving race cars. They get paid to drive race cars. And when they're not driving race cars, they do private coaching for racing teams, or they work for Allen Berg Racing Schools. And so they operate at an extremely high level. And so with that, they have the experience that they can bring down and have the ability to adapt to any of our participants that come into the program to be able to relate to these guys. And the age range in these fellows starts at 18, 19 years of age to 40. But don't let the age fool you, because these youngsters that are coming along and racing have been involved with racing already in motorsports since 7 or 8 years of age. So they have 10 years of high-level racing behind them, and a large part are national champions and have raced at the international level.
We couldn't agree more with that. They were absolute legends. Literally. I mean, half of them have more Instagram followers than Blokes World does. Kind of embarrassing, really. Hey, maybe you could help us out with that while we take a quick commercial break. See you in a minute.
I tell you what, our Falcon is just going to cop a beating when we get home. I plan that we blow that Falcon up next race.
And that's exactly what happened. But we'll get to that. If you've just joined us, you're watching Blokes World, and we're at racing school. Allen Berg Racing Schools to be exact, at Laguna Seca Raceway. Things started getting pretty technical by day 2 of the program, and the school uses Motec data logging systems on the cars, which recorded our every move on track. This gives the instructors a really accurate view of what we're actually doing out on the track, so they could talk us through corner by corner how our laps compared to an optimal lap driven by a professional. And learning how to interpret this data was awesome too, because we're actually running our own ghetto logging system in our station wagon. So when we got home from California and then went to race at the Nota Grand Prix at Lakeside Park in Brisbane, well, here's me to explain more. So viewers, I've just been out for a couple of laps to check our timing system. Now, you can spend thousands of dollars in real race cars to get this sort of functionality, but you can just install an app on your phone or your tablet, and it'll do basically the same thing. It uses a GPS to keep track of where you are on the track, and it uses that to give you your lap times, and it keeps track of where you are at every point on every lap. And so at any given moment, you can see how you're going on that lap, which is really useful for, just seeing if you can try a corner a bit differently. You can see if it made you time or if it lost you time. It's really useful. It's great for keeping track of where you're at, and it's even better for keeping track of who's driving faster. So your iPhone or your Android phone will have a GPS built in, and you can use that as it is, but it only samples once per second. It'll get your position from the satellites 1 time per second. The unit I've got samples at 10 hertz, so 10 times a second, so it's a lot more accurate. And they reckon that, by using some clever maths, the accuracy of the lap timing comes down to, 0.1 of a second, which is fine for us. So the reason we're using it is so that we can make sure that we don't crack the 70-second minimum lap time here. So at Not a GP, they don't want cars that are capable of going too fast. So there's a 70-second minimum lap time, and if you go under that, you get a 10-minute penalty. So it's critical you get as close to 70 seconds as you can without going under. Now for us, 70 seconds is a fast lap. In the Blokes World Falcon, Only one of us has cracked it so far, and this is our third race. So everyone's trying to get that badge of honour where you get a warning over the radio in your ear saying, car 61, you're going to have to slow it down. So 70 seconds is a real stretch for the Falcon. By the time you get to the end of that lap, your brakes are hot. So probably a good lap time for the Falcon to get through a 6-hour race is probably around the 72, 73 second mark. Any faster than that and we're just wearing the car out. It's an endurance race, you've got to remember. The idea is to get to the end still running. Yeah, well, we mostly did that. But now that the race is run and won, not by us, I was able to go home and pull the data out of the iPad and compare laps from each of the 4 drivers on our team. Now, I don't want to bore you with the details, but here's one interesting tidbit. This section here is the approach to turn 1 at Lakeside. It's a part of the track where we brake from about 175 k's an hour down to about 95. Now, a bit of Year 8 maths will tell you that the slope of this line shows how hard the car is braking at that point. So here's Ado and myself. There's pretty casual approach to turn 1, nice gentle slopes there, and we're looking after the car. And then there's Mick, he's had a bit more of a go, but check out Brownie. He's absolutely stomped it on the skids to pull it up. I mean, the same change in speed I've done in 285 metres, he's managed to do in 210. And fair enough, he did set the Falcon's new lap record at Lakeside by 4/10. We'll pay him that. But if this chart tells me anything, it's who's going to buy the next set of brake pads. So there you go, Brownie. I know you're watching this. The data doesn't lie. And viewers, we'll see you after this break. You're watching Bloke's World.
And I love Australian women. I love that accent. It's unbelievable. Siri on my phone speaks Australian, so my wife doesn't like that, but I do.
Welcome back to Bloke's World at Allenberg Racing School's Laguna Seca. We're near the end of our 2-day program, and by this stage we were absolutely flying around the track thanks to some expert tutelage by guys like this.
I've been doing this for 20 years, teaching, instructing, coaching, working in this industry, and I can't tell you how many times someone comes for a bucket list thing, and 5 years later they're still filling that bucket. You know, this gets addicting fast. I mean, we're all here because we got hooked on it early on in life, and it just, once they start progressing, which happens really quickly, then you start learning and going for more knowledge, and it's amazing to watch the transition. One of the reasons I still do this is I love to watch people transition. I love to see when the light bulb goes on and they get it, and they're all of a sudden, you take them from someone that maybe can't even drive a manual transmission to they're out there chasing down fast laps. It's a pretty neat experience.
Well, it sure is, and like we said earlier in this series, we're now desperately addicted to racing, which is fine because there's a low-budget racing renaissance happening back home in Australia. And in case you live anywhere near Brisbane and you want to join us at the Not a Grand Prix at Lakeside, well, let's just take a bit of a run through the track to help you get up to speed. So viewers, right behind me is the kink. It's turn 1. It's a very high-speed turn, and in the cars that we're driving here today, you've got your foot flat on the accelerator all the way from the last turn over the start-finish line, and the idea is you keep it held flat. It gets pretty hairy. If you get a good run off the last turn, in the Falcon at least, we're hitting 175 k's an hour, and on the floaty stock Falcon EF suspension, honestly, a lot of the time you'll just back off because you're only going to lose hardly any time for an extra lot of safety. So if you're on a flying lap, if you're trying to get close to your lap record, it's one where you're flat on the gas the whole way, and you only just come out of the turn before you're on the brakes into turn 2, which is the carousel. Well, it looks like we've got a red light out at the moment. Everyone's going a bit slowly, so while we're here, this is the carousel. Now, this is basically a big 180. It's more than a 180, in fact. and it's really deceptive. It's not one turn. The camber changes all the way through the turn. Coming out of the end of the corner, it actually sort of tightens right up, and so you'll be coming up over the hill, and then you'll see the edge of the track on the left, and it'll kind of be at a sharper angle than you're expecting the first few times. So you've really got to get to know the corner. The closer into the right-hand side you are, the more camber there is on the track. It's a funny thing, you know, the little 4-cylinders, the hill sort of takes care of them, and so they're just trying to power out as hard as they can. But in the Falcon, what I've been trying at least is more of a diamond shape. So taking the first corner, then hooking it back in, and then powering up the hill, because we've got that third gear power in the Falcon. Use everything it's got to get a big run, because after this turn, it's not a straight, but at our speeds, we basically treat it like a straight. So being not a Grand Prix, there's a lot of beginners on the track, and there's also a lot of really experienced drivers on the track as well. And what I've found is that there's a lot of courtey when you're driving around. You know, everyone's put a lot of time and effort into their cars, and no one wants to break their car for their mates, because we're in teams of 4 or more, and no one wants to do any damage to their cars. So everyone's leaving room. Everyone just wants to get the best lap times they can, and you know, when you're racing someone, it just slows you down. It's an endurance race. You want to get as many laps as you can in the 6 hours. The only ratbag I think on the track today is probably Brownie. And don't you go anywhere, viewers, because after the break we're going to show you just a little bit more of our 2 favourite racetracks, Lakeside Park in Brisbane and Laguna Seca, California. See you after this. So after you come out of the carousel, it's a bit uphill, so you're building up speed. The next little interesting one is this right-hander just behind me. And it's kind of scary, because you can get up to maybe 130 k's an hour by this stage in the Falcon. I'm not sure what the smaller cars are doing, but I know that they're flat through this section as well. There goes Ado. I know that Brownie keeps it flat in 4th gear, and he's probably doing at least 1 or 2 seconds quicker just in this section than any of us. When you get around the right-hander, the fun doesn't stop, because you don't have a lot of time to get on the skids while you're going over the rise, so there's no weight on the car at all into Hungry Corner. This is the one where you're pulling positive G's. The car has a lot more weight on the wheels than probably any other part of this circuit. You'll see Brownie absolutely bangs it into this corner. And then after Hungary, you come up here to the Eastern Loop, which is another big loop. The little cars will tend to get away from us on this one, but then we've always got the straight coming up, which is where we tend to do better than them. And that brings us to the final turn behind me here. This is the last turn. Anyway, that's a lap of lapside, blah, blah, blah. And now, viewers, just when you thought this series couldn't get any more self-indulgent, I'm going to play the longest single clip we've ever played on Blokes World. It's the best lap I managed to put together in the Stars and Stripes car. Because when I'm a 90-year-old crusty in a nursing home, I'll always have this to look back at. It ain't perfect, but it's mine. And hey, when you head over to do the course at Laguna Seca yourself, send us a clip. Anyway, here we go. There'll be no commentary, just the sound of the engine and the wind, exactly like we experienced it. there you have it, viewers, a lap in a Formula Renault at Allenberg Racing Schools at Laguna Seca. And at 1 minute 43 seconds, that's the longest single clip we've ever put on the show. But taking us out now is the man who's made it all possible for guys like us to do this, Alan Berg.
Over the years, we've had a lot of Australians come and do our programs. A lot of people from down under. Last year, we had a young fellow come and take our program from New Zealand, and he set the outright track record. So down from your part of the world, I know that there's a huge enthusiasm for motorsport. I experienced that myself racing there 3 times in Formula One and in the Formula Pacific Series. I'd like to invite everyone to come and join us here. If you want an authentic racing experience at an iconic, world-class racetrack, come to Allenberg Racing Schools at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca.
Well, that's all we can fit in tonight's episode of Blokes World. I hope you enjoyed it. But right now, why don't you head over to our website to grab one of these awesome new packs, which will see you getting a Blokes World Flaming Wallet, a DVD sampler featuring all the action when we went to the Ambler Hill Climb in Belgium, as well as that, some action from the 24 Hours Lemons race. You'll also receive a packet of Jack's Black Label beef jerky, a stubby cooler, some stickers, a badge, and guess what? It all comes with free postage. We'll see you next week.